What's up guys, it's UCEC Specialist, and with Season 3 came Battlefield 2042's newest map, Spearhead, a map that I have some issues with.
Trained soldiers with no country left to fight for.
The US and Russia are both being accused of fielding armed no-pats in an escalating fight over vital resources.
Now, I'll be working on a Season 3 review soon, but a huge part of this content drop was indeed the new map, Spearhead. A beautiful, half-natural, half-man-made environment that's roughly the size of Stranded from Season 2. This Swedish weapons manufacturing facility is on the NOPAT's hit list as a factory they'd like to control in order to secure a supply of ammunition. However, unlike every factory in history, this factory sits far out in a wide natural environment with little going on inside of its buildings, and ultimately feels like two unreasonably large rooms dropped in a maze of beautiful green hills. And while this map isn't horrible, at least not by Battlefield 2042 standards, and is again perhaps one of the best looking maps in the game, I have two major issues. First, the two main buildings we see in the promotional art are just that, art. Their massive scale overstates how complex the locations are, as instead of being this thoughtful infantry combat that Battlefield keeps promoting them to be. They're really just a single story, single square room with some boxes and way too many doors and lines of sight. Unlike infantry maps of old, something like CN Crossing, Metro, or Karkand, these environments keep the player moving, constantly rotating and fighting from every direction instead of gaining ground lane by lane. It's much more of a hectic all-or-nothing battle where the attacking team will always be able to gain access and turn the environment into a chaotic TDM because there are so many lanes that you can never be sure where the next enemy will come from. Now, there is an interesting air duct situation where players can climb into the vents from the exterior, but this leaves the player with only the opportunity to jump straight into the middle of the room. A terrible idea as there are so many lines of sight within the center of the building. Making these buildings a few stories taller with balconies, windows, and fewer access points, something like Zyba Tower from Battlefield 3, would have really pushed a more complex and thoughtful infantry experience, while the rest of the map could have handled the larger warfare. In fact, I would be happy to see this map scaled down, the buildings put closer together, and create something more akin to the towers on Kaleidoscope. A much more pure, dense urban experience where the players can more easily tell where the enemy is coming from, while vehicles could patrol the larger objectives, again similar to Stranded or Kaleidoscope. Now, my second issue with this map is something I have a whole other video coming out for. Spearhead is a great example of DICE confusing cover with well-designed map structure. Instead of well-defined lanes that inform and navigate the players into head-to-head combat, we're left with being attacked from all directions and areas of dead space that are very difficult to survive, especially in Conquest. Instead, we must keep our head on a swivel and get rewarded for camping and waiting for players to attempt to cross these open areas. The map doesn't help the player understand where, when, or how they're going to be attacked, and as a result can be overwhelming. Creating some more clear, large touchpoints or more well-defined lanes could help funnel players into engagements like some of Battlefield's fan-favorite maps, such as Siege of Shanghai, Metro, or Grand Bazaar. Maps where the players often die due to a head-to-head gunfight instead of having to be constantly looking back and forth like I do when I play Spearhead. But this can be felt much more on Conquest rather than Breakthrough, as Breakthrough has fewer players and a more defined play area. Now, while I do have a few big issues with this map, I must say the vehicle combat is pretty good, as they now have a little bit of a cat and mouse with the small hills, and the more linear layout of the Conquest objectives is something I'd like to see more of, as it helps create a clear head-to-head engagement. Spearhead is far from this game's worst map, but exemplifies this strange obsession they have with natural areas with little structure. For me personally, I enjoyed this map much more than I did Season 1's exposure, and while I wish it had some of the complexity offered by Stranded, I like how straightforward it can be when compared to the chaotic flow of something like Breakaway, where all the objectives are way too far apart and the environment hurts player mobility. But DICE currently has a knack for weak map structure, no care for lane design, and the continuation of their obsession with open fields that will be the downfall of this franchise, but that's all coming in another video. Spearhead is far from the worst map in this game, and in many ways is a beautiful, simple experience, but does little to challenge the player with more complex themes of lane control, hard-earned flanks, or complex map knowledge. But drop your thoughts below, stay tuned and subscribe, and as always, thank you guys for watching.